Hello, it is Wednesday, and we are going to go over the warm up. I'm going to read it to you. Again, guys, with some of these, if you don't want to listen to me read, you can forward through. But if I were you, you need to make sure that you're turning into the notes part so that you know what our objective is for the day and what we're going to be doing. As well as some of you are turning in blank work, or like you're doing the warm up and then I don't see any other work. You've got to make sure that there's work for everything. So either you are doing it directly on your Google Doc, or you have something separate and you are writing on there. I'm not expecting you to print it out. I luckily have a printer at my house so I can print them, but you just need to have something. And then if you end up doing it separately, you need to take a picture and upload it. If you do the Google Doc, you need to hit turn in. Do not forget that we do have office hours, 7th grade. You can tune in as a class from 10 to 10:15. 8th grade, 10:15 to 10:30. That way that you can come in, say hi. We're going to go over a few things. It's a live video, and we can actually like chat for a minute. Okay, so let's go over this. Today is on personification. We need to make sure that we are reviewing figurative language. It's something that's a little difficult for everyone, across the board in all grades, because figurative language is hard to understand, that there's a deeper meaning. So what we're going to focus on today is personification. So remember, that's when they give human characteristics to objects that are not humans. So I'm going to do the first one, and then you guys are going to do the rest, and I am not going to go over these right now. We'll go over those during office hours, okay? And then we'll just keep on moving. So here we go. The alarm clock screamed at me to wake up. So I know that alarm clocks cannot scream. So what I did was I annotated this. I put my object was alarm clock. What did it do? It screamed. So now I'm going to read through these quickly, and you are going to put your answer down. I'm not going to wait for you to do it and then like we do in class and then go over it. Because this is a video, you can just rewind it if you need to hear me read it again, or you can pause it and then write your answers and then go to the next part of the video. But I want to keep it moving so that the videos aren't too long. Okay, so the next one. The pencil danced across the page like a ballet dancer. The sun called me awake by shining through my blinds. The phone sang a sweet melody to my ears as my mom was calling. Okay, so after that, you guys see a nice little visual of our dark Martians with their golden eyes. And our aim for the day, Kipsters will be able to use evidence from the text to answer comprehension questions. Specifically today, when you look at the next part, with the vocabulary, we are working with write their details. That's what evidence is, guys. It is right there in the text. You're going to have questions that ask you factual questions. And those are things that you can go right in the text. And if you look at the evidence that the author gave you, you can just pull it out and you have your answer. The problem that I'm seeing, and the reason that we're going over this, is because we are not doing a consistent job of finding the right evidence. Or if we find evidence, it's not the best. We could find better evidence to support our answers. And you need to make sure that you are backing up your questions and your answers 100% of the time. If you don't back it up with evidence, who knows if it's right or wrong? You could just be making it up. You have to have text evidence to support every single one of your answers. So that's why we're going over this today. So let's take a look at vocab. Write their details. Details are right in the text. Your evidence is what the author says explicitly in the text. They go together, okay? How do you find the perfect evidence? First, you need to read the question in the whole entire text. Then you need to go back to the section that the question is asking about. Okay, so you need to go back to where the question is talking about. And when you do that, you just need to kind of skim through. You don't, and look for keywords, okay? You don't need to completely reread the text. And then the next question, reread the text, right? Because this is a long passage. it's a long story. And so you can't do that. You have to just be able to, and that's also why we take annotations and why we also write gist statements so that it's fresh in our memory and we know when we answer the questions where to go back to, okay? Number 3 says, find the evidence that answers all parts of the question. Make sure it is the strongest evidence possible, not just one that like, it kind of mentions what's in the question. No, it needs to straight up back up that question. And then all questions must be supported by evidence. If you find the best evidence, your question is going to be correct. You're gonna know that your answer is right. You're not just making it up. As you can see from my SpongeBob, because I love SpongeBob, meme backing up. You need to back up the evidence. Back up your answers with evidence every single time. Okay. And then how do you show the evidence on Google Docs? That's just like a quick little repeat. So you have that U to underline evidence that supports your question. So like when you go in today, you're just going to like highlight it and then hit that U that's underlined, and that'll underline it for you. If you're doing it on your own, you're just going to write out the sentence that you hear that supports your answer. Okay, let's go ahead and watch the model for the first one, okay? So, Trayvon Martin's death is not forgotten even after 5 years. Sanford, Florida. Trayvon Martin was killed 5 years ago in Florida. He was shot on February 26, 2012. Now, I need to remember, you guys, my criteria for success. So remember, I need to think about the question, which actually we did not do first. And so you guys are supposed to remind me, and you're not here to. So we need to actually read the question and then read the whole entire text and annotate as we're reading so that we can get to this question. So let's take a look at the question first. Which of these sentences from the introduction best explains why Zimmerman had a gun? So I am going to box in Zimmerman, and I'm going to say had a gun. Okay, so I am annotating it just like this. All right, that's the question, that's the purpose for reading, okay? And that's why it's so important that we read the question first. So now I'm going to go back. Sanford, Florida, Trayvon Martin was killed 5 years ago in Florida, so I know who we're talking about. I'm going to box in Trayvon Martin. Even though this question is about Zimmerman, we still need to box in the other people or characters that the text is talking about. He was shot on February 26, 2012. The 17-year-old black teenager was shot by a man named George Zimmerman. Again, I'm going to box in George Zimmerman, as you can see here. And I'm going to underline was shot by him, so I know that George was the one that shot him. Zimmerman was not a policeman, but he had a gun anyway. That's very important evidence to underline. Because remember, my question is asking me, why did he have a gun? That mentions Zimmerman, that mentions the gun. He was patrolling the streets in his neighborhood. He was looking to see if everything was safe. So I know when it says he had a gun anyway. Why did he have that gun? It says he was patrolling the streets in the next sentence to see if everything was safe. Martin did not have a gun or knife. So as you look at this sentence above, this is what I have underlined and what you should either write down on your paper or also underline on your Google Doc. So which sentence from the introduction best explains why Zimmerman had a gun? Now I can go right back up my next point. So I read the question. I read the entire text. Now I need to go back up to where was it talking about that he had a gun? I know that that is right here. So I'm going to go back to that section. I'm not going to reread the whole entire thing. I'm going to go back to that section. So he was shot on February 26, 2012. Oh, so, okay. B, Zimmerman was not a policeman, but had a gun anyway. C, he was patrolling the streets in his neighborhood. Or D, Martin did not have a gun or knife. What ones can I automatically get rid of that do not talk about why Zimmerman had a gun? Well, Martin did not have a gun or knife. That's not even talking about Zimmerman, right? That's talking about Martin. So I'm going to cross out D. He was shot February 26, 2012. Again, this is about Martin. This is not about Zimmerman. So I'm going to cross that out. And as you can see, what I did was I even wrote Martin next to it so that I know who that's about. B, Zimmerman was not a policeman, but he had a gun. Okay, true, right? He did have a gun. But our question is, why did he have a gun? Does B explain why he has a gun, or does it just state a fact that he had a gun? And let's look at C. He was patrolling the streets in his neighborhood. Does that explain why he had the gun, or just a fact? So with B, it says he was not a policeman, but had a gun anyway. That is just telling us that he had the gun. That does not say why he had the gun. So I'm going to cross out B, and our answer is C. Why did he have the gun? Because he was patrolling the streets. Wow, guys. It's like magic, right? Like I always say. This matches right up here, okay? We found that. So if we found that at the beginning, so if I said why to this, I can see why over here, okay? So if I'm reading it, I'm like, why does he have a gun? Oh, because he is patrolling the streets. And then there's my answer. All right. Let's continue and go on to the next one. And then the next one is actually going to be your independent practice. I'm going to go through and do some of my thinking with this, but not as much as I did for the model. Okay. So what you need to do is you need to read the text, go back to the section the question is asking about, and underline the best evidence. The first thing that we always need to do, remember, we need to read the question. So our question is, what is the first thing that happened after Trayvon Martin was shot? So who is it about? Go ahead and I'm going to box it. You can bold it. So remember, highlight it and then hit the B. The first thing that happened after he was shot. So this is how I'm going to annotate this question. Okay. Protests started after the shooting. Tracy Martin is Trayvon's father. He went on television after the shooting. Trayvon was just a high school kid. Tracy Martin said he was not doing anything wrong, but Sanford police would not arrest the man who had shot him. Protests broke out after Martin's shooting. They happened in Florida and across the United States. So the first thing after he was shot, what happened? Remember, we know if it's the first thing that happened afterwards, the first thing, we're going to hear that pretty early on in our text. Also, I want to look at the headings. The first heading is protests started after the shooting, but I want to see what actually happened right after he was shot. Okay. So we know that Tracy Martin, we're going to box that in. He went on television after the shooting. So that is telling us what kind of happened after the shooting. So I'm going to annotate that. He said that he was not doing anything wrong. And then protests broke out. All right. So those are important things that I'm going to annotate in that beginning part. Reverend Sharpton steps in. The Reverend Al Sharpton is one of the best-known fighters for black rights. In March 2012, he went to Sanford, Florida. Sharpton spoke at protests there and said Zimmerman should be arrested. Sharpton said the shooting showed how easy it is to get away with killing blacks. Zimmerman wasn't even a policeman, Sharpton said. Yet he could just kill a kid and wasn't even arrested. So here we know that Reverend Al Sharpton is speaking. We can annotate a few things that are important about that, but remember, that is not what our question is asking, so it's not super important to pay very close attention to what that person is doing. Okay, the police believe Zimmerman's story. So who started it? So that's also important to annotate here just about our text so that we know what's going on. Who started it? Other people thought Zimmerman was lying. There might have been a fight, but Zimmerman started it, they said. Zimmerman thought Martin was troubled just because he was black. He did not have a good reason to shoot Martin. In April 2012, sorry, my assistants keep bugging me in my video. Zimmerman was finally arrested and charged with murder. He went to court and was put on trial. The jury said Zimmerman was not guilty. Zimmerman won the case and was set free. Okay. So, what was the first thing that happened after Trayvon Martin was shot? So, guys, very important information in here, but we don't need to pay attention to it if it's not answering our question. So, because we do not have questions about what Reverend Al Sharpton said, because we do not have questions about was Zimmerman found guilty, we don't need to focus on that right now. What we need to do is go up to where Trayvon was shot and what happened after that. So Zimmerman patrolled the streets, Zimmerman spoke to police, Zimmerman was arrested, or Zimmerman was put on trial. So we're going to go up and we're going to look at that. So go up to the beginning. So as we go down, we need to look at where, because the answers are talking about what Zimmerman did after he was shot. So we don't need to focus on Tracy Martin, the father. We don't need to focus on Al Sharpton. What we need to do is we need to find where it talks about Zimmerman and what he did after the shooting. So let's find that. I'm seeing in the second paragraph, Reverend Sharpton steps in. Zimmerman spoke to police after the shooting. He said he shot Martin to save his own life. Zimmerman said the teenager punched him and knocked him to the ground. Then Martin began pounding his head against the sidewalk, Zimmerman said. So, right here, after he was shot, what did Zimmerman do? Was he patrolling the streets? That happened before, right? He was patrolling the streets and then the shooting happened. So we can get rid of A. Zimmerman spoke to police. After the shooting, did he speak to police? Is that what we just annotated in that paragraph? And if you're confused about what paragraph I'm talking about, I'm looking right here, okay? The one that I have circled. So did he speak to police? Did he immediately get arrested, or was he put on trial? While we're looking here, what do we have annotated? Zimmerman spoke to police. So that is why it's a right there detail. We have the answer right there. It's annotated as soon as the shooting happened, right after he spoke to police. So we're going to circle B. All right, and I am going to pause it here, and then I'm going to come back on for independent practice. See you in a second.